welcome to a very special episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. The reason why it's special, well, returning to join myself, Nick Golding, and lead editor Ian Parks is none other than former Force India, Racing Point, Aston Martin, and Alpine team principal Otmar Szafnauer. Otmar, firstly, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. For those who are new to our podcast, Otmar joined us after last season's Miami Grand Prix, so thank you so much once again. To kick things off, how are you? How have you been? And what have you been up to recently?
Well, it seems like this is proven to be a tradition now.
Yeah.
You can say 2 times in a row makes tradition. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was here at the Miami Grand Prix doing a little bit of work, and Ian asked if I would be happy to, on Monday, do the podcast again. And of course, I like you guys, so why not? And, I'm here, you're here, a little bit of our time, and it'd be good to just talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, your time is very much appreciated, so thank you once again. Ian, how good a guest is Otmar?
Fabulous. Otmar and I go back a long time. I was very privileged to do many interviews over the period when Otmar was in Formula One. And of course, as people may remember, that very famous quote on the Netflix Drive to Survive show, when all of a sudden it was that episode when Alpine had unfortunately decided to get rid of Otmar. And I saw him in the paddock at the Belgian Grand Prix. And of course, I said something I really shouldn't have said. The camera was behind me. The big zoom boom mic was behind me, and they caught something I said to Otmar. I won't repeat it on here. Just in case anybody from Alpine is watching. But yes, I felt I could say something like that to him at the time because of our relationship that we did have at the time. So thank you ever so much again, Otmar, for appearing back on the show.
No worries.
Pleasure and a privilege.
Listen, we should never be ashamed of telling the truth.
That was the truth at the time.
Ever.
If I remember correctly as well, that clip of you, Ian, actually made the trailer as well. If I remember correctly, it did.
Yes.
It did. You were famous, Ian, very, very quickly. Otmar, it's remarkable the fact that already we are 6 races done and dusted in this season, 25% completed, 18 races to go. Time is quite literally flying by. What has been your biggest takeaway from the season so far?
Well, I mean, after winter testing and even after the latter half of last season, it looked like McLaren were getting more and more competitive, and they did a good job over the winter to solidify what where they were going towards the end of last year at the start of this, and they've proven to be the class of the field. I was a bit surprised that every once in a while you've got somebody else winning or putting it on pole, and that's somebody else's Max. So I really shouldn't be surprised, because he's absolutely a standout driver for me. But I think the Red Bull perhaps not quite on the same pace as the McLaren. So if Max every once in a while puts it on pole, that's because of his natural talent or learned talent as well. So a bit of both. And then to win, I think McLaren often have even stronger race pace relative to the competition than one lap pace. And for him to even in the race hold him off is remarkable. So the other thing is, I think Mercedes have done a good job over the winter. And I was duly impressed with Kimi this past weekend. For him to put it on pole for the sprint pole, never having driven the track. It's tricky. I mean, you saw there are places where you can go off and hit the wall. Fabulous drive from an 18-year-old. I think he's the youngest pole sitter now. And even in qualifying for the main race, I think he was P3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive. And the racecraft in Formula One. Not that he doesn't have racecraft, but that experience that he's gaining very quickly will help with racecraft as well. I can see him being a future star. He really impressed me this weekend.
It does seem his. Go on, Ian.
0.02 of a second off the front row for the Grand Prix. And as Otmar's rightly pointed out, the youngest pole sitter across any format. Now, when you consider as well that the Grand Prix pole position record is Seb Vettel at 21 years and a couple of months, I think it is. Kimi is 18 years and 8 or 9 months old. So you got to think that
he's got a chance.
He's got a good chance.
He's got a very, very good chance.
Will fall to him at some stage over the next 2 years, because the way he performed across the Miami Grand Prix weekend was exceptional. Yeah, he was disappointed a little bit with himself with the Grand Prix. It's felt he could have done a lot more, but as Otmar's pointed out, there is so much talent within that young driver.
He'll put it all together. Yeah. I mean, in Australia, I was there as well. I think qualifying didn't go his way, but the race was fabulous. He did a good job in the race. And, you know, this time, fabulous job in qualifying. The race was a bit suboptimal for him. But there will be Grand Prix where he puts it all together very soon.
Hell yeah.
It's remarkable. In a way, it's almost crazy to think of what happened in Monza last year in his debut, and he's just taken everything in his stride since then and just seems to be finding so much confidence. Ian, for you, what's been your biggest takeaway from the first 6 races?
I'm going to go with Oscar, simply because of the improvement that we've seen, the level of maturity. We kind of knew he was a mature driver anyway, but I think last year when you saw the qualifying performance in particular against Lando, he was out qualified 20-4 over the Grand Prix. This time around, and as I think I've discussed this previously with you, Nick, he knew that was an area where he had to focus on, had to improve. But I think not only that, the qualifying performances that he's shown this season, it's this, as I said, this level of maturity now within the cockpit. He's so level-headed, so calm, doesn't seem to let anything faze him. And that has transformed himself into the 4 Grand Prix victories that we have seen in 6 weekends. So he has found a new level, which I think he kind of knew he had to, because in going up against Lando Norris as his teammate, and as I say, bearing in mind that qualifying record, he was aware that he had to produce something a little bit different this year. He has, as I say, he had to raise that bar within himself. And I feel he has shown that so far. Otmar, what do you reckon about Oscar?
Yeah, I think, Oscar's still on a learning curve. And I think you're right. It was pretty steep from last year to this year. And he's definitely progressed. Lando is a formidable teammate to have. He's also exceptionally good, and I think 1 lap pace, Lando's probably still ahead, but only marginally, not like last year. And for me, the champion will be the one who makes the least amount of mistakes when racing. They're so close in competitiveness, and there will be some luck along the way, but as time goes to infinity, as you get to 24 races, that luck is smoothed out, and the driver that is most consistent, makes the least amount of mistakes, will be champion at the end. And I couldn't sit here and predict who that's going to be.
Oscar, of course, has a 16-point lead at the top of the standings, has won 4 of the 6 races. But what's really interesting is something that's picked up on a lot this season. It is just the sheer mindset differences between Lando and Oscar. Oscar being this cool, calm, collected figure, it seems. Lando very much wears his heart on his sleeve, is not afraid to share his emotions, to beat himself up, obviously, in the media pen. Otmar, for you, what kind of mindset do you look for in drivers that you think is going to work well for a team?
Well, if you have that steely determination, and you're unflappable, or you have less emotion, I think that in a few sports is very valuable. Motor racing being one of them. Golf being another. Maybe tennis being another. There's a few sports, and they're mainly the sports where you don't have to rely on teammates so much. It's down to you. But then on the other hand, there have been a lot of drivers that are world champions that do wear their heart on their sleeve. So it can be done. Ayrton Senna was a bit more emotional. and probably my all-time favorite driver in of Formula One cars. But others weren't, and so it can be done by either type of personality, if that's the right word. So, like I say, hard for me to predict. Oscar, like you pointed out, has got a lead right now. But, if you have one failure or one off or one DNF or whatever, then that lead is gone. So let's see what happens in the future.
Just out of interest, Otmar, just on the personality clashes between Oscar and Lando, did you ever have two drivers that you were team principal of that were so different as these two?
Let me think back. No, they're mainly pretty close to each other in personality. Not two that were, diametrically opposite, 180 degrees apart. Even like Hulkenberg and Sergio, they're in many ways similar, even though one's German and the other one's Mexican, not really South American, but Mexican.
But when you've got a driver, though, who, something Lando, again, has been so honest about, is that he's got to stop making these silly mistakes, which have been costing him in some qualifying sessions, have been costing him in some races. What do you do as a team principal, to get your driver to make that turn in the right direction, to cut out silly mistakes?
Support. Just absolute support. Reassure him that if you make those silly mistakes, not a big deal. Look to the next one. Just support him and reassure him that he's got the capability to do it, which he does. So if he gets external reassurance, that will give him the confidence. And, sometimes you make those mistakes because you overdrive. Sometimes. I'm not saying that's what he's doing. I'm just saying it can happen. And, just drive to within your limits. Your limits are well fast enough. Don't make those mistakes and you'll be the winner.
I think what we saw in Miami as well with Lando, bearing in mind what had gone on, in particular in the two Middle Eastern races with him, how much he really beat himself up on occasion with the little mistakes that he was making, was that on the Sunday in Miami, yes, he had that incident with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I don't think that was a mistake.
No, it wasn't a mistake. And that's why I was there. That's the point I was going to come to. It wasn't a mistake. Obviously, he was forced off the track. But what we then saw after was this sheer determination and will to really fight his way back to the front. And I think you could kind of tell as well that he was really happy with the second place. He was unable to get back up to Oscar. He did at one phase, but as soon as Oscar managed to get past Max and Lando took a little bit longer to get past Max, we then saw Oscar pull away into the distance. And by the time Lando got past Max, Oscar was too far ahead to then really close the gap. But I thought Lando really showed his mettle on that occasion in fighting his way back to get up to second place, having dropped to sixth at the end of turn two, which, for a driver that's been going through these difficulties mentally, that might have just played on his mind very, very quickly. And who knows how things might have transpired, but he really knuckled down, got back into the race, and I thought produced a very level-headed performance after that to at least gain 18 points and limit the damage in the title race with Oscar.
Yeah, and in a position like that, that's where you can overdrive, like I mentioned, make a mistake, not finish second. He didn't do that, right? So that shows he definitely has the mindset and the talent to do it. It's just, like I say, there's a lot of racing to come. The fellow who makes the least amount of mistakes will be champion.
And one driver, obviously, who's renowned for not making mistakes is Max Verstappen. Despite whatever is going on at Red Bull, Max is still there or thereabouts, pipping McLaren obviously to some pole positions. But what's really interesting is there seems to be this back and forth. McLaren saying that the Red Bull car is better than they're making out. Red Bull saying, no, actually, it's Max making the difference. The car isn't good. Otmar, what do you think about Red Bull? Is it the case that the car actually is better than people think, or is it just Max is making the most out of a bad package?
So I don't have all the data they do where I used to. So I'm only speaking from an external viewpoint, from a macro viewpoint of what's happening. And for me, Yuki Tsunoda is a very competent driver. He has the same car and equipment Max does. And one qualifies on pole and the other one's 10th, 7/10 behind. I think there is a Max factor there from just that perspective.
I think there always has been as well in many respects.
Yeah. And now, if say you look at McLaren, I think best car, and look where those two drivers qualify, within a 10th of each other, not 7/10. So that too tells you something.
And in Miami, they were 2nd and 4th on the Grand Prix grid behind Max. But quite clearly what we are seeing is there is a difference in that car on one lap pace, in qualifying pace.
I agree.
Compared to race pace.
Yeah.
That's where Red Bull is really struggling to extract the performance of their RB21. And that's where Max is being let down by the car.
Or the other way to say it, that's where McLaren really excel on long run pace more so than over a lap. And there could be numerous amount of reasons for that, including car design development, setup, what you set up for, all sorts of things. Tire management, for example, would be another one.
Because that's been one of the biggest talking points is the rear tire temperatures. McLaren developed this car, and despite all the noise about cooling water being inside the tires, etc., which is just clearly nonsense as far as we can tell. But McLaren has been able to extract performance out of that car that ensures that in the kind of conditions that we saw in Miami, which was hot track temperatures, really humid day as well, it manages to keep its tire temperatures at a certain level that allows it to perform longer over the course of a Grand Prix. Whereas the Red Bull in particular, it seems to overheat its tires quite quickly. And that's where the performance drop off has been coming. And that's why Max he did well. He managed to do really well in Miami, managed to keep Oscar and Lando at bay for a period of time, but ultimately the performance of that McLaren just got both drivers ahead, and we saw the time gap, 40 seconds. That was huge.
And it is tires. I mean, when I was at Force India, I made sure we had the best tire engineers that I could hire, and we focused a lot on car development and how that development would treat the tire to gain an advantage. And you probably saw there were races where we're the only ones not doing a 2-stop, where we could go and only do a 1-stop. And that's because we had a huge focus on the tire. And if McLaren did the same and were successful, good on them. Even at Alpine, when I got there, I tried to start bolstering the tire knowledge by hiring further tire engineers. And I think my last Miami Grand Prix with Alpine, we qualified 5th and 8th and ended up both in the points at 8th and 9th. And, that type of performance comes from focusing on the right areas of a car where it's going to make a difference versus your competition. And if McLaren did just that and they're successful, that's a huge advantage.
Remarkable. Helmut Marko came out after Miami and literally, it's just backed up exactly what you guys said, because he revealed that the McLaren was 7/10 to 1 second per lap faster than Red Bull's RB21, which is just remarkable when you think of how dominant Red Bull have been. But what's happening as a result of obviously Red Bull's issues is more and more people, and Max is addressing it every Grand Prix, are asking him, what are you going to do with your future? Will you stay with Red Bull and see out your contracts? Will you leave to Mercedes, to Aston Martin? He's been pretty clear that he's going to stay. Helmut Marko, some races thinks Max will stay, some races thinks he'll leave. Ian, I know you've got a pretty clear opinion on this.
Yeah, you've talked it many times.
Yeah. Otmar, can you see Max leaving at all?
I have no insider knowledge of this. So I'm only going to guess. Ian, what's your guess, or do you have some knowledge of what Max is going to do?
Point I've been making, and I'm sure you most likely will agree with this, is that no one knows the performance of any car next year's. I'd be very surprised if anybody
You have to guess.
You might have
And the powertrain will make a big difference.
You might have a degree of performance as to your own car, quite naturally, but as to the opposition, Max at this stage does not have a clue as to which team is going to be leading that pecking order in 2026. So why would he want to leave Red Bull right now? Because it could conceivably happen that he leaves Red Bull and he goes to a team that will actually prove to be worse than Red Bull in 2026. So my theory, or my feeling has always been, he will give it 2026 at least to determine if he wants to move on elsewhere. Because if Red Bull doesn't perform next year, and he can see that, let's say for argument's sake, or Mercedes, like, or even Aston Martin finally gets his act together and builds a decent car and has a winning package with everything that we know is going on at Aston Martin right now, maybe then at the end of 26, that might be the time for him to decide to make a jump and try something different. But right now, 25 into 26, I don't get it. I just can't see it happening.
Was it 1993 that Ayrton Senna didn't sign a contract and he said, whoever pays me $1 million a race, that's who I'll race for?
I think you're right. I do think you're right.
I think that's what happened. He ended up racing every race for McLaren, but he wasn't contracted. So how about do something like that? Let's start the season and I'll move around. Somebody could pay me $10 million a race.
And I genuinely don't think, though, that Max is attracted by money. I mean, he's already made his millions. You know, he's a guy with a private jet and all of that.
I saw it last week.
Doesn't have to shift to a team like Aston Martin that, yes, we know at this stage can pay.
It'll probably be about winning.
It's going to be about winning. You know, isn't
that next year, though, it's more than just the car.
Yeah.
It's also who's going to do the best job on the powertrain.
Yeah.
It'll be that combination. And, you know, in the past, especially 2014, Mercedes had the best powertrain after we transitioned to the new engine formula. So, yeah, historical performance doesn't necessarily 100% predict the future, but what else can you look at? You have to look at what happened in history. If you have the same people, the same process in the future, you'll probably do a good job. So there's that to consider too.
And of course, Mercedes is actually, and I'm glad you mentioned them, because they've kind of been one of the surprises of this season, given how much they've struggled under these current regulations. This year, obviously, with no Lewis, with George taking on that lead role, Kimi coming in, it feels like they found a bit of a mojo again. George is delivering consistent results. Kimi, of course, we saw his raw pace in Miami. Otmar, do you think Mercedes are finding their groove again at the perfect time ahead of next year?
I think so. I think they've gotten better over the winter relative to where they finished the 24 season. I think they're better. In qualifying here, they were, like we talked before, really good. There are other races where, George has been on the podium how many times this year out of 6?
4.
Yeah. So,
Four.
So, and then Kimi's getting better now. I think you're absolutely right. Mercedes are back on the upward trajectory, and they're doing a good job, and they have 2 very, very good drivers now.
But they're only getting it right at a period of time when the regulations are going to change again going into next season. Yeah.
And I think from a powertrain perspective, you can't count them out to have the best powertrain. But there's great competition. Ferrari can also do a good job. Honda always get it right. Sometimes not at the beginning, but eventually they're there. I mean, they won even this year, their home race with Max in Suzuka. It was a Honda win. And, so there is some good competition. Hard to predict, but in the past, Mercedes, during that transition phase of a new powertrain, have always done a great job.
And of course, on the grapevine, Nick, that is exactly what we're hearing, that Mercedes is developing a really good package for 2026 and onwards, because we know we've got this 50-50 split between combustion and electrical power. And that's one of the reasons why Toto Wolff in particular is adamant that he does not want to see any change. He doesn't want to go the 60-40 split that's been mooted, that we've had these discussions over, and there will continue to be some discussions going forward as far as we understand over the next couple of months. But right now, Mercedes, as far as we're aware, has a really good handle on its package. It's developing something really strong and solid, as it did in the previous power unit regulation change. And we know it came flying out the traps. I'm not expecting it to be the all-time pace setter like it was back then when it just absolutely dominated and barely another team could touch them for 3 or 4 years. But at least we know that Mercedes has a good track record, and you would expect them to be again towards the front of the pack. So if they're developing momentum inside the team and it's going on into 2026, it's looking good for them at this very early stage.
Otmar, I was wondering if you could actually just share a little bit. When regulations do change, obviously, the media hear a lot and the public do as well about the financial difficulties, obviously, especially when it comes to development as well and being prepared. But are there any major challenges that teams face when regulations change, which perhaps the media don't hear about and are a little bit hidden?
To me, the challenge is always optimizing the new regulations to the best of your ability. And sometimes when you're doing that and you're pushing the envelope, especially on a powertrain, you end up with going over the edge and having reliability issues. Because it's easier, it's harder to find performance. It's easier to then throttle back and get your reliability. What you don't want to do is have too much reliability and not enough performance. When you do that and you push over the edge to then throttle back and get the reliability, you have to rely on the knowledge and experience that you've accumulated over the years in the past. And it's those manufacturers that don't have that accumulated knowledge that I think will struggle to then throttle back from a reliability issue just to the right level and not forego too much performance to make the powertrain reliable. And I think that's where Mercedes excels. They also have a lot of great simulation tools that they can rely on to do just what I said. And, in the past, they've done a superb job coming out with a very performant powertrain that's also reliable.
So, for example, for Audi, based on this topic, obviously, for 2026, when it is a new manufacturer coming into a sport at the time of regulations changing, how long does it take, typically, approximately, a new manufacturer to catch up and become competitive?
So, if you look back and 2014, Honda came in a little bit late, and Honda, one of the world's best, if not the best, powertrain manufacturer and developer. I remember working at Honda and hearing a story that one of their first cars, Honda's first car, because they started off as a motorcycle manufacturer, they had some chassis issues, including a leaky roof. And the salespeople were talking to Mr. Honda himself, Soichiro, and said, look, we've got to fix our chassis problems because we're struggling with car sales, including the roof leaking. And he looked at him and said, what are they complaining about? I'm selling them an engine, the rest of the car's for free. So they're all about powertrain and engines, and they produce the best, among the best in the world. And even they, with all their knowledge, experience, the experience of Formula One, almost every time they've been in Formula One, they ended up with the best powertrain. Could be every time. Even, when I was vice president there, we ended up with the 3-liter V10, 968 horsepower, 88 kilograms. I think that was best on the grid. It took them 4 years to get there, but when they started, they weren't anywhere near the best. It took them, in this last generation, a few years to catch up. So even the best of the best take time. That's how difficult it is in Formula One. So it does take time, and I don't know, it takes different amount of time for different people, but it's not zero, it's years. It could be 2, 3, 4 years.
Of course, we've not just got Audi as a debutant.
Yeah.
Red Bull Powertrains as a debutant
Another one
as well. Obviously, with the support from Honda, yes, Red Bull Powertrains will be building on all the knowledge and experience that it would have accumulated in working with Honda over the period of time that those two have been together. And of course, as Otmar's pointed out, they eventually became hugely successful as a partnership. But this is Red Bull now developing its own power unit. How quickly will it be able to get on top of all the nuances of that to ensure that it can build on the success that it has had in recent years? And for Audi as well, as a brand new manufacturer, yes, as Otmar has again pointed out with Honda, it's got all the resources at its disposal, as we all know, huge name in the world of manufacturing. But for them, how long is it going to take? As Otmar pointed out, it could be years. It might not be hitting the ground running in 2026, might not be 28, 29, 30, who knows?
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Ian, because it's really interesting that, and you mentioned this a few minutes ago, in terms of there's still so many debates going on regarding the electrical energy to internal combustion split. And of course, one of the people who have been very vocal about that is Christian Horner, of course, Red Bull team principal. It is staggering, isn't it, that we are, just over 6 months from 2026 and these new regulations, and there's still these conversations taking place about what to do with the split.
It's too late to change.
Yeah.
It's like you say, 6 months away. It's too late to change. Not for next year anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've had conversations. They are carrying on.
I've got to get going soon, boys.
So why do you think then these talks are still going on? The fact that
probably not for next year, probably for the future.
Yeah. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Right. Let's look at another team, Ferrari, who... Where do you start with Ferrari, Otmar? Let's start with Lewis. Obviously, the big money move going into this season. A lot of people with big expectations, of course, converted a sprint pole into sprint victory in China. Everybody thought that was going to be the moment he bounces back. And of course, yes, he claimed a sprint podium in Miami, but it's not really been working out for him, it seems. What do you make of Lewis's start with the Scuderia?
Well, I mean, it is a start. He was at Mercedes for a very long time. Again, a learning curve. I think he's progressing well, like you said. Pole win, albeit in a sprint race. Charles has been there forever, and he's not slow, right? He's a very competent driver, and I am surprised isn't the right word, but I'm happy for Lewis that he's still within striking distance of the points of Charles. Charles isn't that far ahead of Lewis, and Lewis is learning. So by the end, if you had to ask me who's going to be ahead of whom, I don't know. I could see, Lewis. I mean, I watched his race in Miami, and the thing with Lewis is he never gives up. He never gives up. Supreme competitor, works hard. I think he was stuck behind Esteban Ocon for a long time, but he didn't get frustrated, didn't make a mistake, ended up passing him, and then was on, I believe, the medium tire. They let him pass Charles, couldn't catch Kimi, and then they swapped him again. Absolutely the right thing to do, exactly what I would have done, and exactly the rules that we had whenever I was running a team. So Lewis, I think, will get stronger as the year goes on.
Just one very quick final talking point before we do our new predictors game, which obviously Otmar is a bit new to you. I want to ask your thoughts on Aston Martin, because of course, a very difficult start to the year for them. Fernando Alonso yet to even score a point. What do you make of what's going on over there?
Well, I think, they've been ramping up with all the ingredients they need for success, including a whole new campus, a new wind tunnel, a new factory, a new third building. And sometimes when you do that, I'm not there anymore, so I don't know. But sometimes when that happens, you kind of take your eye off the ball, so to speak. The real objective is on-track performance, not creating a new campus. Yes, you need that new campus to be able to impact and have a better success of on-track performance. So Perhaps, I don't know, perhaps that's what's happening. But yeah, Lance Stroll has scored every one of their points this year. Fernando, 0. Where are they in the championship?
Eighth.
The eighth. Yes,
eighth in the championship.
Yeah.
I think for a team like Aston with probably 1,000 people now and some good people there that I know, they should be doing a little bit better. Maybe when the wind tunnel comes online, and with Adrian there, they'll have a bit more success next year. Let's see what happens. Also, Honda powertrains coming next year, so there's more change. But usually, when you change too often and you don't have stability, that often will not result into the on-track performance that you need. So you can't just continue to keep changing and hoping that it gets better. And I think it was Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity is to have the same input, same process, and expect a different outcome. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on there, thinking, well, this isn't good enough, let's change it. But sometimes, especially in Formula One, the best thing to do is just keep it stable, make sure that everyone's happy within the job that they're doing, and they have psychological safety at work, and then you produce a bit better results.
Well, based on their current struggles, I imagine they're probably not going to feature in your predictions in a second. I might be wrong, you never know. But Otmar, we do a brand new prediction game on our podcast. We're effectively, and Ian, I'll let you go first. For each Grand Prix, in this case, Imola, we predict who we think is going to claim pole position, who will claim the fastest lap in the race, which team will produce the fastest pit stop, the top three in the race, and then who you think will finish in P10. That's a new one from now on to make it a little bit harder for us. Ian,
let me get this right.
Go for it.
Pole top three, fast pit stop, and 10th.
And fastest lap.
And fastest lap. Yeah.
Oh, boy. All
Go
right.
on, Ian, I'll let you go first, Ian, so you can share how it's done.
And Otmar can have a little bit of a think while I do this. So, pole position, I'm going to go Lando.
Okay.
Obviously, I know we're getting a little bit samey with some of these predictions, but it's the way it's going in this course of the season. Top three, at least we've seen Mercedes come good. So with Kimi on home soil, I'm going to go Kimi third. I'm going to throw him into the mix, and then I'm going to go McLaren 1-2 again. And I think I'm going to go for Lando. I'm looking for him to come good. So I'm going to go Lando 1, Oscar 2, Kimi 3. Fastest pit stop, home soil again. So I'm going to go Ferrari. Fastest lap, I'm going to go Kimi again for that one. And then 10th position. I like this one. This is the one I did suggest we should throw into the mix.
You did.
Just
taking
to
credit.
put something a little bit different out there. And 10th position, I'm going to go Yuki Tsunoda.
Okay, Otmar, bring us home.
Now I'm very similar in some regards, but I'm going to say pole position. I'll start with that. Kimi Antonelli.
Ooh.
Oh, I love it.
Nice.
Top three, Lando, Oscar, Max.
Okay.
Oh, so is that Max to win or Max in P3?
Max in P3.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Fastest lap.
Fastest lap, Lando.
Ooh.
Pit stop.
Pit stop, Ferrari.
And then the curveball, 10th place.
Lawson.
I like it. Otmar, thank you so much yet again for your time. This has been the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. If you've been watching on YouTube, please let us know your thoughts on anything we've discussed in the comment section below. And on top of that, if you can smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, that would be very kind of you. Ian and I will see you this weekend in Imola. Have a very good week. See you later.
Nick, can I change my prediction for 10th?
Hold on. Go on.
Yes, go for it. Go on.
And 10th?
Go on.
Calapinto.
Oh.